Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Corporations, governments, or any large organizations seem to be magnifiers of human stupidity and wastefulness and inefficiency. And I'm going to give you three examples from my personal life dealing with companies and dealing in one cases with a government organization, just illustrating how insane it can be. And if you're a smart person, if you're a person that cannot abide inefficiency or stupidity, then you're better off doing things on your own, or at least being part of a much smaller organization where things can actually get done and we can actually talk about the truth. And part of the thing I believe, or part of the problem, is that everybody's involved with their own small little part, and they're not willing to step back and take a look at the truth that's staring them in the face. And I'm not going to use the term big picture, because generally when corporations talk about the big picture, what they're really talking about is making the people at the top lots of money. That's the big picture. I'm just talking about the truth. So anyhow, enough fluff and nonsense. First example happens today. It's a 2-week saga that's been going on. I go to a company, one of my accounts, and we have this thing called a vending machine. And in this case, it's a consignment vending machine, which means the customers do not actually pay for the parts in the vending machine, because they're actual tools for machine shops, until they take it out. So these items are there on consignment. We own them until the customer takes it out. Every once in a while, an audit gets done internally, and it decides, this item X is not moving, so we're going to send a whole bunch of it back and just have a few of them in there, because it's not worth our while tying up all our inventory inside this machine. Okay, so they give me a list of things to take out of the machine and return. So I dutifully do so, have their guy return them. I get an email a little while later, and it says this one item, and we're going to call it item 7. This item, number 7, well, 7, we didn't get item number 7, we got item number 3. And we don't sell item number 3. We don't have a history of item number 3 at least being sold to that customer. So it can't be the item, so we're going to send it back. So I call up the manufacturer of said item. I said, hey, let me ask you something. Item 3 has your part number A. Item 7 has your part number B. I'm looking this up on our own website, because that's what I do first. And I noticed, geez, all the designations seem to be exactly the same. I said, by any chance, is item 7 and item 3, are they the same thing? And they'd look at their part numbers A and B and said, oh, absolutely, that's the same exact part. One is what's called the EDP number, and the other one is the designation we put on the packaging that most customers go by. But yes, in fact, they're the same part. So I sent an email back, hey, Super, the manufacturer, has told me this information. In fact, we must have entered it into our database twice, the big, large database of the company where there's thousands and thousands of products. Answers go back, nope, that can't possibly be true. I get my skip manager involved and all this other stuff. And finally, today, I essentially send them all the information. Once again, these are the same part the manufacturer is telling us it's the same part. And the reply is, no, well, it's actually not the same part. We know the manufacturer says it's the same part, but we've given it 2 different designations and 2 different categories of our own. Therefore, the manufacturer is mistaken. It's not the same part. So we're sending it back. We gave it 2 different designations, so they are, in fact, different parts. And this is one person in one department of our company. This is insane. And it matters because either we're going to eat the loss, or we're going to bill a customer for a part they're never going to use. Absolute insanity. If it was you or I running a small company, or or a one-person operation, we would know instantly. Yep, that's it. In fact, we can call Super, the manufacturer, and say, hey, what do we do with this particular thing? They even had the audacity to ask me, hey, do you, Ivan, have a contact at Super that you can arrange a return with? I'm like, no, actually, you do, because it's our company that buys from them. I'm just the flunky that puts the stuff away. Insane. All right, second one, also from the corporate sector. As you may know, I worked for Walmart for a period of time, and in the back room, there's an inventory system, and every single day, what we have to do is scan all of the boxes in the back. This tells us what's actually there. If, in the back room on these big steel shelves, we have the opportunity to put several boxes behind each other, so you can have several boxes of, say, tomato sauce or something like that behind one another, you can do that. When you scan a case, it will instantly enter the case quantity. So say it's a case of 7 jars. We'll use 7 because that's important. All right, fine. So what the corporate method was, or what they told us to do, what the process was going to be, that's the word I was looking for, was, well, when you put several cases behind each other, what you should do is put down the total number. So normally we would write down 7 on this little label. So the person's supposed to know they're only supposed to hit it one time because it has 7 in the case. How they're supposed to know that, I don't know. However, if there's 3 cases, one behind the other, well, now you're supposed to put 21. Now, I was telling my guys, you know what, just put the number boxes, put 3, because it's easier for you that way. Division is very hard. Division is the operation that people find the hardest out of all arithmetic. Now the corporate bigwigs came through, saw what I was doing, and said, no, you can't do that. The process is to write this number down. And I explained to them, okay, but understand, division is hard. So what you're doing is you're putting the integrity of your inventory in the hands of the dumbest guy that works here that may not know how to divide by 7. And so when he sees that number 21, he may not know how many times to scan that box. He might scan it 4 times. And this is preposterous. That doesn't matter because he won't do that because the process is to write the number and scan it the appropriate number of times. Because that's the process. So that's what he's going to do. Are you with me? Speaking of the process, we'll talk about the protocol. Third one, I was working for the state of Connecticut. I was working in a semi-secure facility. It was not a prison, but it was a facility for people that had a criminal record. They were members of a different department or clients of a different department. So what happened was at some point there, all of us had key fobs or cards. Just like you see in the movies, you can swipe your card, it lets you out. It knows who you are, which person you are. We're going to call us guards, even though we weren't really guards, but for all intents and purposes, when in that moment when we're swiping a key card to get from place to place within the facility, we're guards. There's 2 exterior doors to this place. One we just can't get in or out of. It's completely locked. Another one goes into the backyard, which has huge fences which are curved over, like the kind you see around prisons. So they're impossible to climb without dying or even to get over. And so to get out into the yard, the backyard, you can just scan a card. There was another part you could get out of in the kitchen, and this led to a sally port, a port where it was much easier to climb this fence, but our car was in there, the big van was in there, and the gate would slide back and forth. And so you had to accompany the residents in this area because conceivably they could climb the fence. It was hard, but it wasn't hard, impossible. So this actually had a keypad on it. So we couldn't just slide our card. We actually had to enter a particular number, and I think it was the last 4 of our social. So it was a number that wouldn't be apparent to anybody. However, there was a lot of different maintenance people going in and out of the building, and they found it cumbersome and tiresome to have to enter this number, and they really didn't want to have to do that anyway. So one day the head of maintenance came in, and he was a bigwig, and he said, well, here's going to be the new protocol is we're going to put just a card reader here. So all of our maintenance guys are going to use the same card reader to get in and out, so they don't have to keep typing in these numbers like you guys do. So from now on, the protocol is going to be nobody will ever exit this building, without, by this door. Only the maintenance people with. The protocol will be that you will exit the building by this other door to go into the backyard, because the backyard actually, what I neglected to tell you, had a third door which connected it to the sally port, which we actually had to type in our little number in. That will be the protocol for going in and out of the building. You will no longer be allowed to go in and out of the building by this door because it doesn't have a keypad, so it's not as safe. So you won't do it. Only the maintenance people will do it. And so I asked, well, these residents were actually quite violent, and that's why we had the keypads, and the cars. So, well, if they were to disable one of us, in this case, they would be able to use the card from us to open the door into the sally port, that door we're not supposed to use, and then they could conceivably get out. And they said, but they won't do that because the protocol to exit the building is to go through the other door and then through the third door, which it requires a keypad. I said, well, they wouldn't necessarily they don't care about the protocol, they care about escaping. He goes, no, you don't understand. They won't go through that door because the protocol is that only we go through that door, and so anybody else, including them, have to go through these other 2 doors. Do you understand? Are you with me? Are you lost? Big organizations do not work because they're only as good as the stupidest person in the chain. And it's amazing who the stupidest person can be. And people get stuck on we have these protocols, and this is the only way things are going to get done. And so there's no, if there's a big obvious gaping hole, or if the manufacturer of a product tells you, hey, this is the same product, and we can tell them, no, it's not, because we decided it was two different products somewhere in the company. Somebody decided. And so at this point, this particular bean counter is, grinding things to a halt. I forget the guy that came up with the theory of BS jobs, but I think we're right there. We're right there. So you're much better off. If things like this bother you, you're much better off doing something else, doing something small, getting involved with a small company, or starting your own darn thing where you don't have to deal with stupidity. And I, for one, am sick of it.